So, I mean, there's a lot of jobs that you could say are potentially dangerous. Pizza delivery man, that might be dangerous. Wrong neighborhood could be a problem. Cab driver might be a problem. A lot of different jobs could be a problem. I just think that we've got to say at a certain point, we've got to just say to ourselves, you know what? We love football, and those who play might get hurt. It's kind of like smoking cigarettes. Some people, although they read all the warnings, still want to smoke cigarettes, and they're still sold at the store. So somebody's going to get hurt. People are inevitably going to get hurt because of cigarette smoke. It's going to happen. Cigar smokers probably going to have a problem. On that same note, I should double back to baseball, because baseball came up with a whole new wrinkle with this whole tobacco thing now. Now they're trying to stop, dipping, chewing any sort of smokeless tobacco, which is really, really hard to police. I mean, that could be its own issue unto itself. But smokeless tobacco, I find to be a little bit of a problem in terms of the policing of that. But but again, before we go too far into into smokeless tobacco and what you do with that as a policy, I just think we've got to get our arms around the CTE issue once and for all, and say, hey, we drew a line in the sand at a certain date. We came clean. Even if we had a double clutch and come clean again with some sort of additional settlement. I'm not saying the NFL wants to do an additional settlement, but even if it has to, at a certain point, we got to get it behind ourselves and say the next generation of athletes that plays football went into the sport with their eyes wide open. They knew that you could get injured playing football. It's no longer a newsflash. No longer a newsflash. Kids are talking about it. Everybody's writing about it. Everybody knows about it. And people are still going to play the game, and people are still going to watch the game because we love it. At the end of the day, you know what? The NFL is a lot like porn. It's like porn in pads with a helmet. Kind of sexy. It's kind of sexy, but it's like porn in pads with a helmet and a mouthpiece, man. You gotta watch. You're gonna watch. You may want to watch on your own. You may want to watch on your own terms, in your own little corner, maybe on your own little device. But you are going to watch NFL football, and you are going to watch porn. There must be some coincidence, because they're both like 10, 11, $12 billion businesses. So people are getting it in, and they're watching. They are consuming it. They are for sure consuming the NFL, and they are consuming porn. And guess what? In porn, you can get hurt also. You can get injured. You can end up with disease. There's drug addicts. There's HIV. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm not advocating that everybody become a porn star, but the people who are doing porn know the risk, and the people who are playing football know the risk, and everybody's still doing it. And everybody still enjoys it. So there's an audience for it. So if there's an audience for it, then we gotta get over the fact that it makes us a little bit uncomfortable, and that somebody got a brain injury. And I'm not saying that to make light of people's brain injuries. I'm just saying that at a certain point, I don't know if it's 2016, 2015, 2014, 2013. Whenever they're going to say the study came out, and whatever the payout was, even if they've got to make another payout at a later date, folks of the next generation, like my kids growing up, if they've got contemporaries, I have two teenage daughters. If they've got contemporaries in their high school, it's going to be difficult for those kids to leave high school, go on and play college ball like I did, and then take a shot at the pros and say, "Oh, we had no idea that there might be some risk here." There's some risk, guys. There's some risk. And, that's just what it is. And it you could have some injuries. It just could happen. So that's what my take is there. Now, I do want to say this about, I touched briefly upon the smoking law. Major League Baseball's going a whole different place with smokeless tobacco. Smokeless tobacco, needless to say, I've seen pictures of some old ball players back in the NFL. I mean, granted, everything was way back when, but whether or not it was Red Auerbach in the Boston Garden, smoke. He used to light his cigar in the Garden when they were winning games. That was like the symbol of the fact that the Celtics had won another game. Certainly, they won a big game. I think if they won any home game, he used to light up in the Garden. Certainly, if they won a championship, and he was he was a shorter man, but he used to smoke a big, huge, obnoxious cigar, the kind that I personally enjoy. So he used to light up his cigar, but in the middle of the stadium. I mean, people would be horrified today if somebody attempted to light up a cigar in the stadium. But again, people would be horrified if people decided to smoke cigarettes on a plane, and we used to do that like it was right. So I mean, it's all relative. I realize life changes and laws change, and health risk and seatbelt laws change. I mean, I realize that all of those dynamics change. I just think, though, that when you go to smokeless tobacco, you're really kind of getting into an area where are we going to start policing what's in somebody's mouth? I mean, what if you're walking by somebody and they spit on the ground? Do you know if they just had a bad taste in their mouth and they spit on the ground, or do you actually know for sure if they had a little dip in their mouth, in front of their mouth, on the side of their mouth? I mean, not everybody, sometimes we see those guys who back in the day in Major League Baseball used to have a huge wad of tobacco in their cheek. Well, most of them don't even do that anymore because it appears, unsightly and nobody wants to see it, and I'm sure they've been coached not to do it. Some of them used to mix a combination of tobacco and gum in their cheek and just do this huge wad, back in the day. But now most guys, I think they just put a little bit, in the front of their mouth and then, and kind of dip it underneath their lip. As a guy who played football, I wasn't a big dip guy back in the day, but I did try it a little bit. I tried the little packets when they came out with the packets, because the packets were neat because they didn't get like all over your teeth and all over your mouth, and you can get a little buzz. You can stick a couple of them inside of your mouth. And nobody really knew. And especially if you had the stomach to be able to swallow the tobacco juice or whatever it kind of kicks off, if you had the ability to swallow that, which I did, it wasn't a big deal. If you were a guy where if you had one of those big things to chew, that most likely you were going to spit that out. And that's where the spittoons and the cups and the cans and everybody walking around with those cans and cups, which was just completely nasty. That's when used to see a lot of guys doing that. But I just don't know from a public policy and policing and kind of First Amendment rights, I just don't know where we're going with the smokeless tobacco law. Like, are we going to really start going into dugouts and really start going into guys' mouths on the field? I mean, if a guy takes a couple of these little pouches and sticks them in his lip, and then goes out onto the field and starts playing ball, and he spits a couple of times, and he's going to be used to spitting. You know why? Because baseball players spit. Because they're just sitting there, they're doing nothing, they're counting the crowd, and they're used to spitting. So they're just like, and if no balls hit to you for a couple of innings, man, you're going to sit around, you're just going to start spitting. You may have some flower seeds in your pocket. You may pop a couple of those in your mouth. Are we going to start inventorying what's in people's mouths? I mean, I don't see how we're going to do that from like an ACLU perspective. Players, although they are players and athletes, they're still going to have rights as human beings. And I just don't see how we're going to start literally searching the inside of people's mouths who have a legal substance, but now baseball is deciding in certain stadiums, either with baseball itself or the cities themselves, have decided to ban smokeless tobacco in a city and in a stadium. I just think that's headed for like a major lawsuit down the road, just in terms of the invasion of somebody's privacy, because you're gonna, it's gonna appear so arbitrary after a while as to how you're going to enforce what's in this guy's mouth and what's in that guy's mouth. Well, I thought I saw him with something in his mouth, and you might have thought you saw me with something in my mouth. But let me tell you, these little pouches, they are so small. They're really, really thin. If nobody's ever tried them, they're really, really thin, you could easily tuck one inside of your lip and nobody would know you have one. You could stick several of them inside of your lip and nobody would know you have them inside your lip. And unless you're spitting on the ground in an area where people see you visibly spitting multiple times and really, really often, and unless there's a spitting law, I don't know. I just think they're headed for a major issue with the ACLU. But hey, listen, that brings me to my next subject, and I would like to ask my man Nick for 6, if he's got 6 for me, because I got to cover something that came out of Georgia. Here we go. Come on. Here we go. Come on. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. No, we did it. No, we didn't. 6 minutes. Well, for 6 minutes, I want to discuss Kirby Smart from Georgia. Kirby Smart from Georgia. Kirby Smart is the new head football coach at the University of Georgia. And he is this week's new hashtag that I am rolling out. Kirby Smart. He probably has a twin brother named Herbie also. But Kirby Smart, hashtag WCP, world class punk, an absolute punk. My issue with Kirby Smart is this. This past week, Kirby Smart's the new head coach at Georgia. He took over a program for a guy named Mark Richt, who went on to become the head coach at University of Miami. Richt was there for about a decade or so. Had some pretty good success, but, success in the SEC is measured against, national championships and have you beat Alabama. If you haven't beat Alabama and haven't done it, on a fairly regular and/or had a national championship, then at a certain point you got to go. So Richt had to go. Great coach, did a fantastic job, but they decided to get rid of him and go in a different direction. So now they bring in Kirby Smart. And Kirby Smart decides, with the help of the administration, to limit the teams and the schools that players can transfer to. So if players started, because most football players, most D1 football players are usually in school for 5 years. The whole 4-year college thing, that's a misnomer in football. So most D1 college football players are there for 5 years anyway. So they usually redshirt a year and then they got 4 years after that. Well, if you were recruited by Mark Richt and you really wanted to come to play for Mark Richt, well, all of a sudden Mark Richt leaves and now you're stuck with this guy, Kirby Smart. And I'm not saying Kirby Smart is necessarily a bad football coach, but he's an unproven football coach. He's unproven. So now we got a new guy this is his real first head coaching, first big time head coaching assignment. So he comes in, and the first thing he does is lays down the law with the administration to restrict what schools kids can transfer from. So let's say you're a guy who's there. All of a sudden you find out your head coach, Mark Richt, leaves, and you either want to leave and go with him, follow him to University of Miami, or you just want to go to any other school because maybe you never wanted to go to University of Miami. Maybe you looked at the Miami situation and said, hey, look, these guys, they don't have a field on campus. They don't have, they don't have the facilities. The University of Miami thing is kind of dead now. It may not. If it comes back, it may not come back for another 5 years, and you don't want to be part of a rebuilding program. Maybe you want to go to a bigger program. So all of a sudden, they're saying that you cannot transfer, whether or not you were a freshman, sophomore, junior. Let's say Kirby Smart's coming in, he's going to run a different offense or a different defense, and somehow you don't think you're going to get a shot. and you just want to leave and go to another school, they're saying that even though you would have to sit out for a year anyway, because that's the NCAA